Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. It's good to see you, Daniel.
Good to see you, Dr. Paul.
I want to talk a little bit today about a declassification of a report, a DIA report, Defense Intelligence Agency report, that was written in 2012, and it has to do with what was going on as the war was expanding in Syria, and trying to clarify what our policies actually were regarding this area. And it turns out it's really pretty sad. It turns out that the evidence is here, although the suspicions has been there, that our government was following a policy that seemed to be deliberately helping ISIS. And of course, the other day we recognized that the bombing that we've agreed to recently is to bomb the Kurds, but not ISIS. But here back then, we were picking sides, and this report tells us a little bit about it. And the interview was on Al Jazeera, and a former director, Michael Flynn, was being interviewed, and he was revealing this information. And actually, the interviewer thought, oh no, this can't be true, and he wanted to give Flynn a chance to soften it, that it can't be this bad, you know, for America to be in this position. So they then went and when they look at this, they find out that indeed there's a lot of information. But I imagine Flynn has a lot of information and knowledge, being the director of the intelligence agency.
Well, the Defense Intelligence Agency sort of serves the same purpose that the CIA does for the president. They serve that purpose for the military, for the four branches of the military. They provide both analysis and even operational forces. So they're sort of a shadow CIA. And whereas it might sound wasteful, in fact, with intelligence, sometimes having duplication is better because you get different perspectives. If you remember, the 2007 CIA or the intelligence assessment of Iran was really important, and the State Department intelligence took out a footnote, which is that they disagree. So duplication is important. But Flynn was not only the head of the DIA, he was also the head of the Joint Special Operations Command, which is an increasingly important and well-used part of the military under Obama. So I think in these two capacities, he certainly was in a position to know. And the question is, why would he come forth at this time? We don't know exactly, but we do know that there are some people from within government. We talk about people like Manning, and we talk about so many others who tell us inconvenient truths. And I think Mike Scheuer falls in this category. He followed Osama bin Laden for so long, and he finally came out and told us why everything they were doing was wrong. So maybe this has something to do with it.
Well, this reminds me of the confusion, in 07, I guess, or leading up to the Iraq War, and the trouble that Colin Powell got into. Just does he get convinced? Is it confusing and all this? But literally, it's the lying that counts, and so many times we get lied into wars, and this looks like we're working on this. And the immediate response to this by the establishment insiders who are the experts in the CIA, and their credentials are questionable compared to Michael Flynn's. So they go to them and they say, this is all a bunch of fluff. These are conspiracy people, and they're working up something. But also a website which is pretty prevalent now, and that's Daily Beast, and they have a Jacob Siegel in there that writes on this, and he comes down very hard on anybody releasing and talking about this information. It doesn't mean anything, but I think it's up to us to help people sort this out and find out what is true and what is not.
Well, I think what you have are people within government who believe that the world is their chessboard and they can move the pieces around at will. So they will support ISIS here because they think they'll get this job done, just like they supported the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. And when things backfire, then there's no trail to lead to them. But what gets me about this is that the U.S. government knew. Flynn said that my analysis was pushed up the pipe and nobody paid attention, but they had to have seen it. This is an important guy. So they knew what's going on. They knew that the U.S. had been supporting ISIS, supporting the rise of ISIS for tactical reasons, obviously not for ideological reasons. But we have a situation, we talked about this earlier, yesterday, the State Department briefing. So the U.S. pushes ISIS in Syria. ISIS destabilizes Syria because the U.S. wants Assad to go. They turned the place into a disaster. But even now, the State Department is bold-faced lying about what happened. Toner, who is a spokesman for the State Department, said yesterday that it's all Assad's fault. He is, quote, the root of all evil because he created the conditions that the Syrian people find themselves in today. He said, the Assad regime has been instrumental, this is important, has been instrumental in creating the kind of lawless area where ISIS has been able to extend its roots.
It's so blatant, and yet it's so hard to get people to understand this and react to it and rein in our government. You know, telling the truth is difficult. The bigger the government and the bigger the empire, the more they tell lies, and you know, truth is treason in an empire of lies. But also remember the statements during the Soviet era that they always tell the truth because the party establishes the truth. Truth is relative, and in a way, this is the case. I mean, presidents are allowed to lie, you know, the noble lie, and they're allowed to tell lies because it's in the interest of the people, and that's a different story. And the neocons, you know, accept that principle. So this is this has a lot to do with ethics and morality in the Constitution, as well as the rotten details that we read, and they do this, you know, almost with a clear conscience. Now, I just wonder exactly where McCain was when he was over there helping us, the American citizens, to go over there. He was the expert. He traveled in and out of there, and he was going to help direct the assistance. I would think the odds are pretty darn great that he would have had access to this information and knew darn well exactly who he was recommending would get the support.
They even pointed out some of the unsavory people he met with while he was there. But of course, he blustered and blundered and said how outrageous people to question, you know, who I was there meeting. You know,
right. So I think this report is very important. I'm impressed with the fact that we got to see it, and I don't think we have a full understanding of exactly how sometimes things get out. I think you made a point. It's not complete. It's been redacted. It got out under the Freedom of Information Act, which are supposed to give it to us, but the fact that things are supposed to be released on the Freedom of Information Act, that doesn't mean anything, you know, if they don't want to have it. But anyway, I think we're fortunate. They've tried to put disclaimers on this so nobody will pay any attention, but hopefully people will pay attention to this. And not only the politicians, but ultimately the people of this country have to say, you know, this is not a good policy. And yes, all these details are going to be hard to work out. And that's why the word that the founders used, entanglements, we should avoid. This is an entanglement, and there's too many factions, and none of this is done in the interest of the United States national security.
Well, you know, frankly, after you and many others were proven right in opposing the Iraq War, saying it was based on lies, I didn't think they would try to get away with it again in such a bold-faced way. But the media, once again, is lining up behind these stories. They're not questioning anything, and we are in high gear toward war with Syria. As a matter of fact, on Friday, the UN Security Council is debating a resolution that the U.S. has tabled that, under the guise of looking into who used chemical weapons in Syria, I believe is a Trojan horse as a vehicle, because right now it would be illegal to attack Syria, although we're doing it, but a full invasion would be maybe over the top. If they can have some sort of a fig leaf through a UN Security Council resolution, which I think they will get, then I think that is the open door. Well,
the big obstacle, of course, is the propaganda of government and the propaganda of the media, the propaganda of our newspapers, what is left to them. And so they hear the other side. Now, what we have is the internet, of course, but they still have tremendous influence on propagating this type of information. And if people, you know, sort of eyes glass over on this. So, but of course, that is one of the important reasons why we have the Ron Paul Liberty Report, is try to get this information out. And this is where we hope to be able to explain what is happening thing, and that you are invited to study and reflect on and accept the notion of non-intervention. Because once you concede intervention, then there's all kinds of interventions, big ones, little ones, all over the place, and then it's sort of like intervention in the economy. They argue over how to intervene and who gets the money. In foreign policy, it's the same way, and they give and take, and Democrats aren't exactly like Republicans. Neocons influence both. The military-industrial complex influence both parties, but the information that you get can only come from a site like ours. And actually, the Ron Paul Liberty Report now has its own site, ronpaullibertyreport.com. So feel free to go there to keep up on this information. And of course, always continue to follow up on the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity that Daniel McAdams is the executive director of. I think you can get the truth from there, and you can spread the truth, because if you need the ammunition of the fallacy of our foreign policy, and right now it's a ridiculous foreign policy when it comes to Iraq and ISIS and Syria, and it's time for us to wake up. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, and come back soon.